The woman with the issue of blood. The Bible says in Mark 5:25 through 34, Now there was a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus, and came up behind him in the crowd, and touched his cloak. For she said, If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well. Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that power had gone forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, Who touched my clothes? And his disciples said to him, You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, Who touched me? He looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. He said to her, Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. The Lord never refused to offer his help when he was asked, because that's his nature, to always give. He gives to all and receives from no one. When you come to Jesus with faith, born from the Spirit, you receive. The woman with the issue of blood first heard, then believed, and finally received. When she touched Jesus, she came in contact with him, and something happened. According to the scriptures, she saw her healing before she ever received it. We see this when Jesus addresses the woman with these last words, Daughter, your faith has made you well. When you acknowledge him, power goes forth from him and meets your need. The Lord persisted to find the person who touched him. Why do you think he did that? He did it for two reasons. First, because he wanted to show to all those around him that there are different kinds of touches. There is a touching that is born by emotion and a touching that is experienced by faith. And secondly, because he wanted to let them know that he saw that power going out of him, emphasizing that this power doesn't go to everyone. Jesus knew that someone in the crowd was greatly blessed, and that required that the testimony of that person be heard publicly. He wanted people to know all the details of her sufferings and how much money she had spent on doctors all these years. There were many that were touching him, but they did not receive any healing because there was no acknowledgement of God's presence in their life. When you see a divine appointment in the Bible, you also see the solution in every situation. The Bible says in Mark 10:46-52, Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples together with a large crowd were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside begging. When he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Mary rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stopped and said, Call him. So they called to the blind man, Cheer up, on your feet. He's calling you. Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. What do you want me to do for you? Jesus asked him. The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. Go, said Jesus, your faith has healed you. Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. When this blind man, Bartimaeus, heard that Jesus was in Jericho, he cried out with a loud voice, asking him to have mercy on him. And even though many people tried to silence him, he persisted until Jesus responded to his cry and healed him. The Bible says in Luke 19:1-10, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, He has gone to be the guest of a sinner. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Jesus said to him, Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost. This man named Zacchaeus, who wanted to see Jesus, but because he was little of stature and there was a big crowd, he climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him when he would pass by. The moment Jesus came to that place, he looked up and saw him and told him to come down because he was going to spend the day with him at his house. Zacchaeus was touched in such a way that his inward change was demonstrated by outward actions. When you are desperate for a divine touch, there is no way that Jesus will pass you by. His loving mercy is present to respond to your heart's cry. This teaching is also available on our website at www.zavlarisministries.org under Sermons, Divine Visions. You can take notes and read it at your own pace. Stay blessed, Apostle John Zavlaris.